Imagine cooking every day without electricity, without metal pots, and without sharp knives. Yet somehow, every meal is warm, nourishing, and perfectly balanced. How do they do it? In Tibetan monasteries, the kitchen isn't just a place to prepare food, it's part of their spiritual discipline. Their secret isn't in special recipes, but in their relationship with the elements: stone, wood, fire, and air. Cooking without modern tools isn't a limitation, it's a deliberate choice that strengthens patience, discipline, and harmony with nature. Welcome to Western Monk. Today you'll discover how Tibetan monks cook without modern utensils or electricity, and why this ancient way keeps both body and mind in balance. Get comfortable. Let's step into the heart of monastic fire. Most of us start our day by flipping a switch, turning on the stove, plugging in a kettle, or pressing a button on the coffee maker. For monks living high in the Himalayas, none of those things exist. There are no outlets, no gas lines, and no stainless steel cookware. And yet the kitchens of Tibetan monasteries are alive from before dawn, filled with the sound of boiling water, crackling embers, and the low hum of chanting. In these remote communities, cooking begins with what nature provides. The stove is often a hollowed-out pit lined with stones, where yak dung or dry twigs serve as fuel. A small spark becomes the heart of the monastery's morning routine. Monks move quietly, each one knowing exactly where to place the stones, how to angle them to balance a clay pot, and when to feed the fire just enough to keep it breathing. Instead of metal pans, they use thick earthen pots made from local clay. These pots absorb and hold heat gently, allowing food to cook evenly without burning. Some are wrapped with layers of straw or ash to protect the outer surface. When the clay cracks, which it often does in the cold, it's patched with a paste of mud and yak butter. Nothing is wasted, every mark tells a story of long use and care. There's also an artistry to how they control temperature. Since there are no knobs or thermometers, heat is measured by instinct. Monks hold a hand above the coals to feel the energy rising. Too hot and the food becomes angry, they say, a concept that links physical heat with emotional imbalance. Too cool and it lacks life. Learning to read fire is a lesson in patience and perception. The meals themselves are simple but sustaining. In the morning they prepare pocha, or butter tea, a rich drink made from tea leaves, yak butter, and salt. Traditionally, it's mixed not with a blender but by pouring the tea back and forth between wooden churns until it reaches a creamy texture. The process takes time, but the rhythm of it warms both body and spirit. By midday, another dish simmers on the stones. Tsampa, roasted barley flour mixed with tea or broth. No frying pans, no spatulas, just the warmth of hands kneading the flour into a dense, hearty dough. For outsiders, it might look primitive. For the monks, it's a perfect balance of nutrition and mindfulness. Every tool, every motion is intentional. The ladle carved from wood, the bowl shaped by hand, the fire sparked from dry grass, all serve as reminders that cooking is not about convenience, it's about connection. The less they rely on tools, the more they rely on awareness. In one monastery near Lhasa, visiting travelers often note the silence that fills the kitchen. No chatter, no metal clanging, just the rhythm of breath, the crackle of wood, and the slow bubbling of tea. Watching the monks cook feels like watching a ceremony. And in a way it is. The act of preparing food without modern help becomes a form of devotion, a conversation between human effort and the raw elements of nature. By the time the meal is ready, hours may have passed. Yet there's no rush, no stress. What matters isn't how quickly it's done, but how fully it's lived. To cook without fire or metal is, in essence, to cook with patience, with earth, and with heart. And this is only the beginning. Next, we'll uncover why monks choose this path when easier options exist, and how this philosophy shapes every meal they share. If you ask a Tibetan monk why they cook this way, they rarely mention tradition or necessity first. They speak about intention. Cooking for them is not separate from meditation, it's part of it. The same awareness used in chanting or sitting practice flows into how they wash rice, boil water, or knead barley flour. Every motion is an exercise in presence. Most monasteries are built in places where survival alone demands ingenuity, high-altitude plateaus surrounded by wind and silence. But even when modernization reaches the valleys below, many monks continue to cook in their ancient ways. It's not because they can't modernize, but because they choose not to. The simplicity of their kitchens reflects the simplicity they aim for in the mind. In Buddhist philosophy, the kitchen is seen as a mirror of one's inner state. A cluttered, rushed cook produces scattered energy in the food. A calm, mindful cook prepares nourishment that carries peace. It's a belief shared by many Himalayan traditions that food carries the mental quality of the person who made it. So before lighting the fire, monks center themselves through breath or silent recitation. Only then do they begin. There's an old saying in one monastery near Shigatse: "When your mind boils, let the pot rest." It means that anger, frustration, or distraction will spoil even the purest ingredients. To prepare food, then, is also to prepare the self. The rhythm of the monastic day reinforces this. Monks wake before sunrise, long before the world stirs. The air is cold, thin, and sharp. They sweep the floor, fetch water, and gather twigs, each task small yet meaningful. Nothing happens quickly. The slowness is deliberate. It sets the tone for the day's practice. Meals follow strict order. There's usually one main cook, sometimes an elder, sometimes a rotation among novices known as the chopa, or offering master. His job is not just to feed others, but to maintain the spiritual harmony of the kitchen. Before every meal, a small portion of food is placed aside as an offering to unseen beings, a gesture of gratitude and respect for life. That same spirit extends to how they eat. When monks gather for a communal meal, the atmosphere is quiet but alive. No one eats before the abbot lifts his bowl. No one serves themselves before the person next to them is served. Eating becomes synchronized, like a slow collective meditation. Even laughter, when it happens, feels gentle, never loud, never distracting. For them, food is not entertainment, but energy for the path. They often say, "We eat to support practice, not pleasure." Yet paradoxically, that detachment makes the experience deeper. Because they are not chasing taste, they can truly taste. Visitors to Tibetan monasteries often describe the meals as humble: barley, butter, soup, and tea. But what surprises them most isn't the flavor, it's the feeling. The warmth, calmness, and quiet satisfaction that lingers after eating. That's the result of food cooked with awareness. Some modern nutritionists who have studied Himalayan diets note that despite limited variety, monks maintain steady energy and rarely experience the digestive issues common in city life. They attribute it partly to the slow preparation, partly to the balance of natural fats and grains, and partly to the mental state during meals. Cooking this way teaches one powerful lesson. Nourishment isn't just about what you eat, but how you make it. The mind that stirs the pot shapes the meal itself. In the next section, we'll go deeper into how they physically cook using earth, fire, and steam, and how nature becomes their greatest utensil. When monks cook, they don't separate the process from the environment. The earth, air, water, and fire all become part of the recipe. In most Himalayan monasteries, the kitchen is built near the ground, with a small pit in the center for fire. The walls are darkened with smoke from years of use, and the scent of wood, tea, and barley lingers in the air. To outsiders, it looks primitive. To the monks, it is perfectly complete. Their main source of heat is often stone and ember. Large flat stones are heated in the fire until they glow faintly red, then placed beneath or around the food. This creates a slow, even warmth, similar to a modern oven but guided entirely by intuition. For bread, they use two stones, one beneath and one on top, sealing in the heat. The result is a smoky, dense flatbread called kapse or balap korkun, depending on the region. Each monastery has its own variation, adapted to altitude and available grain. For boiling or steaming, monks use clay pots shaped from local earth. Clay is both porous and resilient, holding heat without overheating the contents. It's common to see a pot half buried in ash, the heat regulated by layers of sand. Water drawn from a nearby stream is filtered through fabric. No metal strainers, just fine woven yak wool. Another ingenious technique is stone boiling. When water is scarce or wood is limited, monks heat round stones directly in the fire, then drop them into a wooden or bamboo bowl filled with liquid. The stones release heat gradually, cooking the soup or tea without a flame touching the container. As the water bubbles, they remove the stones with wooden tongs and reuse them. It's a practice as old as Himalayan settlement itself, still seen today in some nomadic camps. They also cook with steam and sunlight. In summer months, monks dry vegetables and herbs on rooftops. The sun becomes a silent cook, drawing moisture slowly while preserving nutrients. In some areas, they use small clay domes to trap heat, a kind of natural solar oven. The food never burns, it simply transforms under the pace of the mountain day. A favorite communal dish, especially during winter retreats, is thukpa, a hearty noodle soup. The dough is rolled by hand on flat stones, cut with wooden blades, and simmered with bits of vegetables, butter, and salt. No timers are used. They listen for the bubbling sound and smell the broth. When the scent is rich and the steam turns soft and white, it's ready. There's also a symbolic layer to these methods. Fire represents transformation. stone symbolizes stability, and steam embodies impermanence, the moment when solid becomes invisible. By cooking with these elements, monks literally practice Buddhist teachings through action. To handle fire is to understand change. To work with stone is to practice patience. One monk once explained it like this: when we cook with metal, we control the fire. When we cook with stone, we cooperate with it. That cooperation is key. The fire decides the pace. The cook learns humility. Even cleaning reflects the same attitude. With no running water, they wash utensils using sand, ash, and hot water from boiled stones. It's surprisingly effective, and the abrasive texture of ash leaves clay pots smooth and clean. Wastewater is poured into the earth, never wasted, often near plants or small gardens where monks grow onions, spinach, and herbs. Visitors are often amazed that despite the lack of modern convenience, the food feels alive, warm, balanced, and grounding. You can taste the environment in it, the mineral flavor of stone, the smoky trace of wood, the freshness of mountain air. In a world where we chase speed and uniformity, they practice the art of cooperation with nature. Cooking with the elements teaches more than technique. It shows that simplicity can produce depth, and that control is often overrated. The monks don't measure success by taste or presentation, but by harmony, when fire, water, and mind move together in rhythm. And once the meal is ready, something remarkable happens next: silence. In the next part, we'll step into the ritual of eating itself, how a meal becomes meditation. When the food is ready, the fire slowly dies down and the kitchen grows quiet. What follows isn't just a meal, it's a ceremony. For the monks, eating is as sacred as prayer. The same focus that fills the temple now fills the dining hall. In most monasteries, the dining space is long and simple, rows of low wooden benches and tables worn smooth by decades of use. A faint scent of tea and barley lingers in the air. The abbot or senior monk enters first, followed by the others in silence. Each monk carries his wooden bowl and spoon, not assigned to him by rank or privilege, but by routine use. These personal tools are cleaned, dried, and wrapped carefully every day. They're not property, they're companions. Before anyone eats, a chant begins. It's low, slow, and steady. A few verses of gratitude for the food, for the hands that prepared it, and for the beings who gave their labor and life so others may be nourished. The chant doesn't ask for blessings, it expresses them. Gratitude is assumed, not requested. Then the serving begins. The cook or chuppa moves from row to row, pouring butter tea into each bowl. The sound of liquid hitting wood echoes through the room like soft rain. Each monk waits until everyone is served before taking the first sip. There's no rush, no conversation, just the quiet rhythm of eating together. In this silence, awareness sharpens. The monks taste the warmth of the butter, the salt, the earthiness of barley. Each bite is deliberate. They don't check the time or think about what's next. This moment is practice. Eating slowly teaches them to notice, to feel the temperature of the tea, to hear the crackle of the fire outside, to sense the body receiving food. It's mindfulness, not as a theory but as a physical act. When visitors are invited to share a monastic meal, they often struggle at first. The silence feels heavy. The urge to speak or compliment the food is strong. But within minutes something shifts. The quiet becomes calming. The act of simply eating without distraction feels new, almost luxurious in its simplicity. One traveler described it as tasting food for the first time in years. In some monasteries, after everyone finishes, the youngest monks collect leftover grains and tea. Nothing is wasted. Leftovers are either shared with animals or placed outdoors as offerings to local spirits. Even crumbs have purpose. This deep respect for food comes from the Buddhist teaching of interdependence, that every grain of barley represents sun, rain, earth, and effort. To waste food is to ignore the chain of life that brought it to your bowl. There are also communal feasts held during special ceremonies when hundreds of monks gather. The preparation may take days, but the spirit remains the same: silent cooperation. The cooks chant as they work, stirring massive pots with wooden poles, adding butter and barley by the handful. When the meal is served, the chanting continues, blending with the clatter of ladles and the hiss of steam. What stands out is the absence of ego. No one claims credit for the food. No one complains about flavor. Each meal belongs to everyone, and no one, it's a shared rhythm. The fire burns, the hands serve, the bowls empty, and the silence returns. For the monks, the meal is both fuel and teacher. It trains patience, gratitude, and humility. It reminds them that nourishment doesn't come from taste, but from intention. When the final sip of tea is taken, bowls are cleaned with a small splash of hot water and wiped dry with cloth. Then with one bow, they leave the hall. No applause, no closing words. The practice is complete. And while most of us return to busy kitchens filled with noise and light, the monks return to stillness. Their simple act of eating becomes a mirror. How much noise do we bring into our meals? How often do we really taste what's in front of us? Next, we'll look at what modern life can learn from this simplicity, and why less technology in the kitchen might mean more peace in the mind. When you leave a monastery kitchen and return to modern life, the contrast is startling. Our kitchens hum with electricity, microwaves beep, timers buzz, blenders roar. We move fast, multitask, and eat standing up. But in the mountains, monks move slowly, deliberately. They cook with earth, not gadgets, with attention, not efficiency, and in that simplicity lies a kind of intelligence that modern life often forgets. The first lesson their way of cooking teaches is presence over speed. Monks don't separate time for cooking from time for living. It's the same thing. While they stir tea or knead dough, they are practicing mindfulness, focusing only on what's in front of them. Psychologists today talk about mindful eating to reduce stress and improve digestion. Monks have lived that reality for centuries. By slowing down, they don't just digest food better, they digest life better. The second lesson is less dependency, more creativity. Without electricity or tools, monks rely on intuition, the elements, and cooperation. When we have fewer resources, we become inventive. A wooden spoon replaces 10 utensils. A stone oven replaces an entire appliance set. This minimalism doesn't come from poverty, but from wisdom, the understanding that tools should serve awareness, not replace it. The less they use, the more mastery they gain. Third, gratitude as nourishment. In monasteries, every meal begins and ends with thanks. Not just polite words, but real appreciation for the rain that grew the barley, the yak that gave its milk, the fire that cooked the food, and the people who prepared it. Gratitude turns eating into a ceremony of awareness. And modern science agrees. People who eat with gratitude experience lower stress, better digestion, and deeper satisfaction. It's not mysticism, it's biology meeting mindfulness. There's also a lesson in rhythm. The monk's day moves in cycles. Dawn fire, midday tea, evening silence. Technology has broken our natural rhythm, making every moment available for stimulation. But when we cook or eat like monks, slowly, at fixed times with purpose, our body resynchronizes with nature's pace. It's the rhythm our nervous system was designed for. Simple, steady, human. One of the most striking things about monastic cooking is how it redefines the idea of enough. In modern culture, abundance means variety. Dozens of ingredients, flavors, and textures. For the monks, abundance means sufficiency. A bowl of tumesa, a cup of butter tea, and a moment of peace are more than enough. They see luxury not as having more, but as needing less. And maybe that's the deeper invitation behind their kitchen. To cook without modern tools is to remember what truly feeds us. It's not the technology or the taste, it's the act of giving attention. Every time we stir, cut, or serve food with awareness, we are practicing the same discipline that monks keep alive in their mountain monasteries. You don't need a clay pot or a stone fire to follow their path. You can practice it right where you are, by turning off distractions, by breathing before you eat, by thanking the food on your plate. The real monastery isn't a building, it's the state of mind we bring to ordinary things. In the end, Tibetan monks remind us that cooking can be more than survival or pleasure. It can be meditation. The fewer tools we depend on, the more space we have for attention. The less noise we create, the more clearly we can taste life itself. So the next time you prepare a meal, pause, feel the warmth of the stove, the sound of water boiling, the rhythm of your breath. For a moment, you're not just cooking, you're connecting with something timeless. The same flame that burns in those mountain kitchens burns in you. The monks don't chase simplicity, they live it, one meal at a time. And perhaps that's the true secret of their kitchen. To cook with awareness is to feed both body and spirit.